Hi, golf friend. Welcome to Above Par. I am so glad that you are here. I'm continuing my series on interviewing some of my clients or people who have worked with me so that you can get some insight on how they use the tools in this podcast and how I've worked with them one-on-one to help transform the way they show up on the golf course and off of the golf course. And my hope is that you can relate to part of their stories. So this week I have my client Kathleen Foley, and she's going to share with you how she has used some of the mental skills and tools to have more fun on the golf course, to be more relaxed, how she's taken them off of the golf course when she's traveled and with family, and how she shows up in different relationships, and how she's using it to set some goals, some really scary goals to take her game to the next level. So I hope you can relate to part of Kathleen's story. So let's get to it. All right, Kathleen, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
You bet. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, so this is Kathleen Foley. We've been together since earlier this year. And so why don't you tell everybody how you found me and what was pivotal after we had our initial call?
Sure. I had listened to you on another podcast, and I was really interested in what you were saying, so much so that I went to your website and then had an opportunity to do an initial call with you, where I took the call and thought, I'm a positive person. I'm pretty sure I already managed my brain pretty well, but I was also at the same time feeling really frustrated in my golf game. So there was something that you had pointed out that was definitely worth exploring. And during our call, it became very clear that although I'm a really positive person, I have a lot of fun on the golf course, I was at a point in my game that I was really frustrated. And I was feeling stuck and kind of running in quicksand, and just was playing a lot of frustrated golf, and not having much fun. So by the end of our call, I was really intrigued because it was very apparent that I had been kind of suppressing a lot of feelings that were coming up, a lot of feelings that were generated by thoughts I was having. And you made some really good points about our brain. We have one brain, and we take it to the golf course. We take it out in the world with us. And I was really interested. And once we started talking, it was really powerful stuff.
Yeah. And the thing that's interesting about that is when you said, I remember this in the conversation too, you were like, oh, yeah, but I'm a really positive person. I have a lot of positive thoughts. I'm not very negative. I perceive myself as being a positive person. And the indicator a lot of times, which I think I probably referenced in that call, is actually how we feel. So while the words can sound positive, like, no, we're upbeat and all the words sound good, our indication is how we feel. And of course, since you were having some frustration, and when we challenged some of your good thoughts, like your positive thoughts, and like kind of question, do they actually feel good? And you realize you might be positive in the sense of the words that you're saying, but maybe they're not useful words for you that serve you, because that's like a lot of the language that I say when coaching. And that became like a little pivotal point for you.
Absolutely. So we talk a lot about that our brain's going to serve up thousands of thoughts a day. So while I was being my positive self, I would have thoughts of why am I bothering? I had this laundry list of things that were going wrong. And sure enough, I could find evidence about them throughout around. And the more I understood that my thoughts were creating my emotions, light bulbs really started going off, because instead of just putting these thoughts off to the side or squishing them, I have through our work together, and it's definitely a process. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a process of understanding and really applying the ideas and really sitting with them. It's not to say I don't get frustrated on the course anymore, but if something starts going south, and I all of a sudden am having thoughts that are creating feelings of frustration, I'm able to pivot and ask myself, what's feeding these thoughts? And while something might be true, it may not necessarily be useful. So there could be a situation of the course is really wet, they overwatered, it's been raining. I hate playing in the rain. I hate playing when it's wet. The ball doesn't roll. And finding all this evidence as to why I'm going to have a crappy game, I now can go, the course is wet. The course is wet for everyone. While I might like it, I need to put it aside. And because it's not going to be a useful thought to keep looking for, that's going to create negative emotions around my day.
Yeah, you got really good at that. And that was one of the things that you and I talked about, is that we have one brain, that all these tools are happening for you on and off the golf course. And I encourage people when we start working together to use them on different aspects off the golf course as well as on the golf course, because you get better at it the more you do it. And the more that you do it off the golf course, you start seeing evidence of just how you do have one brain. And when you go on the golf course, it happens a little bit quicker or sooner, or it becomes easier, let's say, because things happen faster on the golf course than in your off golf course life. But I know we had lots of conversations about how much value you were getting out of using it off the golf course. So can you tell everyone how you use that a little bit more off the course too?
Yes, and that was something I had shared with you, Kathy, early on. As I was learning this, I thought, wow, this is really powerful, because I was seeing differences off the golf course and just living life, be it in relationships, with family, friends, with situations that happen to all of us throughout the day. I was putting it to work or having an awareness about it, and immediately you could see a difference in how situations would unfold, or how I was dealing with any situation, be it being stuck in traffic to dealing in any sort of conflict or situation. It doesn't even have to be a conflict. It could be just any situation where you start feeling a certain way and ask yourself, what am I thinking that's making me feel this way? Be it good feelings or negative feelings, when you start asking yourself, what's creating these thoughts? And sometimes you just have to sit in it and deal with it, and then move past it and go, okay, that's enough of that. I understand where that's coming from. I'm going to move past it. Really
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah, you did
I
that a
would
lot
say
with
it's
some family issues, right? And it could be things that we just have patterns with our family, where it's patterns of thought and just how we interact with people, whether it's confrontational or just tense. I remember you sharing a couple different situations where you just switched the way that you thought about that conversation or that person, whether it was your
exactly.
family or off the golf course, and it changed the whole dynamic of that relationship as far as how you showed up, right?
Yes, for sure. And we all have family dynamics. And for me, there was two different situations. One situation that historically I would always feel really defensive right away. And now when, be it just a conversation or situation comes up, I'm able to not go in a defensive way, recognize it, and be able to have really just a clear thought process, or be able to process a situation much easier, or not make assumptions about what is happening that may or may not be happening. I recognize what I'm doing, or my thoughts, rather than putting thoughts in someone else's head
Yeah,
about what they're
because
doing. And that's
right.
really powerful, because we all think we know what's happening in someone else's head. And if you just kind of take care of your own thoughts and understand that your thoughts are bringing out emotions, it just provides a much greater clarity
Right.
in
And
any
you feeling like
situation.
you're not at the effect of those things, right? You feel like you
Right.
have a little bit more control over it. I remember you went on a trip too. You used it when you got stuck in some travel, right? It's like,
Yeah,
this is an opportunity to practice my skills and not getting frustrated traveling.
exactly. There was like a 3-hour process just to get through one security line. It was just ridiculous. And here we are standing in this ridiculously long line that is unending. We know we're going to miss the flight. And instead of standing there in extreme frustration and listing all the reasons we're frustrated, or why the world's unfair, or feed that negative experience, because you could look around and be frustrated at, there's no water, there's no food even available, the line's moving too slow, my back hurts because I'm standing too long, we're going to miss the flight, then this. And it's just this avalanche of negativity, instead of going, hey, there's nothing we can do about it, just control what you could control and let the rest go. It's not to say that's not a frustrating situation, because it is. And I'm not saying it's not a frustrating situation. It's how you manage it with your emotions, because it's just not useful to sit there and get all worked up and mad and angry and tight, and it's just not
Right.
worth it.
Right. Which sounds like a golf shot. basically, right? Like
Yes.
we miss hit golf shots and we can get frustrated because we have basically everything you just said right there could have been a golf shot versus a line at Air Canada
Yeah.
trying to get on a flight. And it
Yeah.
doesn't serve us, especially after a shot, right? Now we start arguing with reality. It already happened. There's not anything we can do about it, kind of standing in the line. There's not a dang thing we can do about it. Then my power comes in being able to pivot in those moments, to be able to shift to something more useful for the benefit of my next shot and for the benefit of, in the travel example, of you just spending the next however long in line, right? So you're not
Right.
miserable in either situation. And that's about one of the things that we talked about is being the spectator of your brain and learning that skill of pivoting, which becomes so useful for you on and off the golf course. I think you mentioned to me that you probably use the tools and the things that we talked about over 60% of the time with off golf course stuff, because, you know, we do
Right.
spend most of our time off of the golf course than on. So give us a couple of examples of how you're able to now spectate your brain and pivot a lot better. Let's talk about something on the golf.
On the golf course, it's a really powerful tool. It takes a little bit to really get used to having the awareness. You have to commit to wanting to have the awareness. A recent example is during our club championship, I got off to a rough start in the first round, and what I wanted to do was quit. I could tell the tightness was starting, and I thought, I'm just going to quit. I'm going to say I don't feel well and I'm going to leave. I just kind of giggled and thought, oh, that's the old fight or flight thought coming up. And I just kind of giggled to myself and thought, no, that's not useful. We're not doing that. I have no intention of quitting. It was just my brain offering up this thought. I've never quit during a round, and I really don't think I ever would. I'm really confident that I would never quit during a round, but my brain offered this up. And before I would have probably just stuck it down and would stay in the back of my mind. But with this new awareness, I giggled to myself and said, oh, look, isn't this funny? Well, that's certainly not useful. You're going to stay here and fight. And I just put it aside and everything turned out fine. I mean, I just went back to, I'm going to stay in the moment and go through my pre-shot routines to find my state of calmness and certainty and confidence on different shots, and everything, it was fine. But I experienced it, and with the understanding that these negative thoughts just don't go away. You learn to accept what your brain is offering and then move on. Feel it, acknowledge it, and then move on and pay attention to the stuff that's more useful. One of my favorite sayings that I hear myself say on the golf course is, while it may be true, is it useful? So that could be you're playing with really chatty people. The weather might not be good. It might be too windy. It might be too wet. The list goes on and on. And if you just kind of start batting them away, going, well, that's not useful. It's true. It's freezing out here. I don't want to play out here, but that's not going to serve me well in staying, connected and playing from a calm state. So
that is so good. You get an A+ on absorbing this. Like you could go out and teach this right now on how well you've done on absorbing all the content and the stuff that we've talked about. Yeah, that's like that goes into the WWKS. What would Kathy say? Is like,
yeah,
if this is might be true, but is it useful? Those are like my terms, right? So that's so good.
It's my favorite. That's my favorite one, I think.
Yeah.
And I've had a lot more fun on the golf course, and fun's probably not the right word. I've been in a much more relaxed state or aware. I'm going to say aware state of all these thoughts. And now that I have this awareness, I witness people just come unglued, because once the negative thoughts start, they just are spewing. And I think that's the challenge, is because we all know people and we all play with people that have just this negative flow of comments. And even after the round, everyone wants to talk about their worst shots. And it's just kind of interesting, because you see that their negative thoughts are just leading to worse conditions and outcomes for them.
Right. We get wrapped up into our environment. And when we are also the negative people, we just kind of is like this group behavior, so to speak. And then when you go through and you do the work with me, or you get involved with the podcast, then you start noticing everybody from the outside a little bit more being, oh my gosh, they're so negative. I know what's going to happen if they keep thinking that thought. They are going to implode and things are not going to work out that way. I used to be like that, right? And you're choosing not to be like that. It's so much easier to see how everybody else is behaving. That's why I think this is, if anybody who's listening to this is going through the work, this is your leg up on people. Most people aren't doing this. They become at the effect of their brain versus what you're talking about is being so intentional. And I love the way you phrased it. I'm going to steal this from you, Kathleen, because I love how you said the decision to be aware. That's so good because it is a decision, right? All we had to do is decide to be aware. And a lot of times, a lot of people don't want to look at it, or they don't want to spend the time looking at their thoughts. I had one client who said, I just don't want to think about what I think about. I'm like, well, that's your thinking right there. You're thinking like you can't not do it. Right. So you deciding to be aware is such a great statement. All you have to do is just make that decision. And the other thing that I love that you said was when you're talking about the feeling of wanting to quit, before it might have been where it lasted and hung out and affected your play for holes on end, shots and holes on end. And you made another great comment. It's not like the negative thoughts go away, because they will not, because we have a negative bias in our brain. It's just going to be negative. It's always going to look for the ways that everything can go wrong. We just have to be on to it and then be able to pivot and have the tools to pivot. It's about how long it lasts. Right. So it shows up, there it is. And the sooner I can pivot from it, the less it's going to impact my play or my life. And right now, some people might be at the point where it lasts 5 holes and progress is lasting 4 holes. Right. And then it turns down to a shorter and shorter version, or now it only, affects the next shot. And I'm trying to keep minimizing that. It's just a process of doing the work. And I also love that you said that it is a process. It's something that you want to learn. As long as we have a brain, we're always going to be doing the work. There's always going to be things that are coming up and work for our brain to do, and things that our brain will believe to be facts, that sometimes it helps, like talking to me or talking it out or writing it down. I encourage people to write it down so that you can see your thoughts and get them out of your head. And you've got really good at that.
Well, I needed to make sure that I wasn't just running over them. I wanted to make sure that I was truly understanding that, as these feelings and emotions were coming up, that I was kind of sitting with them for a little bit. Because like the flight one that we talked about, wanting to quit, it would kind of linger, and I wouldn't keep thinking that I wanted to quit, but the tightness and the feeling in my stomach and not having fun and all of the actions and the results stayed because I hadn't really dealt with that feeling of I want to quit. Even if I knew that I didn't want to quit, my body was still acting like I was going to quit. Meaning I was tight, I was anxious, I wasn't having fun.
So the reason that we want to quit is because we're trying to get away from an emotion. And we think that quitting will feel better than how we feel right now. And that's when you have that urge. It's really an urge to quit because I just want to escape how I'm feeling. And if we don't address how we're feeling, right, then that won't go away. But we really are weighing out, well, if I quit, I have to deal with the shame of quitting, which I think I can handle way better than right now, that feeling of frustrated and disappointed and feeling like a failure and all those things. They both feel crappy, and we kind of weigh out which one feels less crappy. And we end up making that decision unless we know how to process all that stuff, which is basically what you're talking about right there.
Yeah, it's really powerful. I mean, I think I send you little notes going, this stuff is good. It has definitely helped my golf game, and more importantly, my experience on the course. And it's really fun. It's really good stuff.
Well, I've loved working with you, and you get an A+ student as far as like.
Oh, thank you. I've enjoyed working with you too. It's really fun. I mentor new golfers, and I think every week I have 2 or 3 new gals, and I'm forever forwarding on your podcast because new golfers really need this to understand, because they say the things that new golfers will say, going, I'll say, what do you think about it? They go, I'm saying, I don't want to hit it in the sand. I don't want to hit it in the sand. I'm like, well, your brain doesn't know, don't. And they're like, huh? What do you mean? And
Yeah.
then that's
Well,
a
because
perfect
new
segue.
golfers, I think every level of golfer, I have listeners from all different stages of play, but new golfers are going to enjoy the process of learning the game so much better if they understand how to manage their mind around it.
Yeah.
Because everybody who is listening to this podcast, who's played golf, understands that the learning curve is a little slow until we kind of get our feet underneath us. And that getting people into the game, it's the mental battle of going through that struggle of just learning the game, because there's so many different components that it's so useful. And I think it's I love what you do. So basically what she's talking about is, Kathleen, there's an organization that has people who are these new women who go out and play, and then they take a little bit more experienced, knowledgeable golfers like Kathleen, who help mentor them and teach them the ropes of getting out there and playing so that they're more comfortable to go out and start playing on their own. And I love that you do that. You do that on a regular basis.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great program. We're just, we focus on everything that's wrapped around pace of play and just golf etiquette, so that these ladies can go out and play around and understand what they're out there to do. And meaning no one cares how they play, but they care about their pace of play. And we talk about that all the time, because they're like, well, I'm not good enough to go. No, you're good enough to play. You just have to keep up with the group in front of you. And if that means picking up, so be it. Because nobody cares how you're playing. They care about your pace of play. Yeah. And then they really get that, and the whole goal is to help them get comfortable on the golf course. Yeah. So. Yeah, I love all that. Oh, yeah. Okay. So now tell me what's next for you, Kathleen. Well, my goal is to continue with this process, and the area that I'm really trying to focus on is believing without evidence. And Kathy, you and I have been talking a lot about this, and the believing without evidence. I would love to be a 5 handicap. Even saying that gives me a little pit in my stomach. So, and you say, well, the more uncomfortable it makes you, the better, all the better. So I'm really working on believing without evidence, and little things like, is it possible? And so when I'm out there, I'm like, it's possible that this could happen. It's possible that I can make this shot. It's possible that I can shoot in the low 80s. And so I just keep saying it's possible. And and I'm looking for evidence as to why it can happen instead of the reasons why it cannot. I also work with the technical side of the game, but our mind, I think, it starts with the messages our brain is telling us. Right. When you create a goal and then you get that feeling in your pit of your stomach, I would want someone, and I encouraged you to keep pushing your goal to a level until you felt like you were almost going to throw up in your mouth. Right. And then we know we've hit the sweet spot, right? Because now your brain, just like you said, is going to offer up all these reasons why you can't do it. And all that is a list of work to do to manage your mind around. Write down all of those things, all those reasons your brain's giving you why you can't do it. And then we got to just pivot on each one of those and start shifting into things that we can believe, so that we can start seeing the evidence of it. Those are the things that hold us back. Granted, there might be some physical components to it, if that's a thing, like we talked about for you, like as you're working on your swing. But the rest of it is you just believing it's possible you can do it, because our brain always wants us just to stay home and not do anything. Right. And so it's instantly going to go, no, you can't do that, because we haven't seen that you've done it before. And if you go and pursue this goal, you might be upset and you might be hurt and you might feel disappointed. So just don't even try. Right. And I encourage you to go pursue that goal, even if you don't reach it, because you're going to love the version of yourself you become in the pursuit of that goal. Yeah. So I like that, I like the pit in the stomach. I know you like the pit in the stomach. And it literally does give me a pit in the stomach. Because the other thing I say is too, so what's going to happen is once you reach your goal and you've trained your brain, or you've seen the evidence of how you overcome all those obstacles, once you get there, then you're like going, okay, well, I want to do this now. And you already have proof and evidence of how to do the process. I know it's going to happen. My brain's going to give me pushback, and I know I just have to work through it. And then when you keep repeating that process of setting something that makes you uncomfortable, overcoming it, then there's like no stopping you. Right. It's all really good stuff. That's for sure. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you, all the time that we've spent together, and it's been a lot of fun
as always, just having our calls and talks and
Yeah.
watching you use all the tools in your life. I've loved all of that. And I love your support on my end as well. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
You bet. You bet. It's been really, really good. I love learning, and you and I have really clicked, and it's been a lot of fun. So, and
Thank you.
it's really, really good stuff. You can't stop learning this. I mean, you can't stop using it. That's what's really fun. And
Right.
right.
And you can't
I share
unlearn it,
this
is
as
what I
much as I can. You can't unlearn it too, and you can't reach a point. You could become not being as aware of it, I suppose. But once you start being aware of it and you see the benefits of it, it's like, why would I want to put this aside?
And most people think they have to fix their swing, and sometimes we do, but it's like it's good to know if I do, or if it's I'm getting in my own way with my brain, and then there's just work to be done. So all right,
it's really fun. I love it. So I appreciate getting to chat with you about it, and look forward to more good stuff. I love getting pits in my stomach when we talk on the phone, because then I know it's working.
Yeah, exactly. And I in a sick way enjoy that. Yeah.
That's funny.
All right. Thank you, Kathleen.
You bet, Kath. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, there you have it. Hopefully you can get some inspiration and insight from Kathleen's story as you set your goals for the next upcoming year and envision how you can take the tools off of the golf course and up-level every area of your life. If you want some help or you want some direction, make sure you reach out to me at kathyhartwood.com. Have a beautiful week. I'll talk to you next Wednesday.